Shelley clutched her stomach as she stumbled down the street. She'd lost a heel from one of her shoes, and that made walking complicated. The trauma of her attack made it even more so. Part of her was still amazed to be alive and relatively unhurt. When the asshole in the leather trench coat grabbed her and dragged her into the alley, she felt sure that she was about to be raped and probably killed. Instead, there was a sharp pain in her neck, and then she woke up sometime later with a headache and a burning sensation in her throat. Dazed, she staggered out of the wrong end of the alley and was a few blocks away before she realized that she was lost. Then she heard the whistle. Turning quickly, Shelley saw a trio of young gangbangers step out onto the street and start walking towards her. She remembered now that she'd been heading for an underground party in a less than safe part of Chicago, but she'd told her friends that it would be okay as long as they didn't go past the expressway. She now realized that she was quite a ways past 51st Street. No, she wasn't okay. She had dodged one encounter, only to stumble into another, and it looked like she might well get raped and killed, after all. Yet somehow, that pounding in her skull and that burning in her throat actually seemed like bigger problems to her than the approaching thugs. "You look a little lost, pretty thing. Don't you worry. Me and my boys are gonna take good care of you. Show you a real good time." The leader of the trio leered at her, and his two buddies laughed cruelly. She should have been afraid, of course. Being angry at her circumstances was an understandable reaction too, but fear should have crowded out the anger. Tonight, it didn't. The boys that laughed and advanced, the pounding and the burning got worse. Then everything went red, and the screaming started. The tiny part of Shelley that retained some awareness of her surroundings was genuinely surprised that the screams weren't hers. Everything was red, fuzzy, and unbearably hot. The sensation subsided for a moment as something warm and delicious flowed down her throat, easing her strange thirst. However, as soon as the liquid stopped flowing, the red came back, stronger than before, right up until something that felt like a sledgehammer struck her right between the eyes. She awoke sometime later in another place. The thirst was still there, but weaker, and, for the moment, manageable. The pounding in her head was much fainter, but still there, as if waiting for the right moment to crank back up again. She was on a couch in a tasteful yet Spartan apartment. Framed pictures of concert posters covered the wall. Across the room was a young black male who looked to be in his early 20s, if not younger, sitting in a leather office chair behind a smart IKEA desk. He was wearing a Versace suit over a t-shirt and was reading an Intro to Conversational Greek textbook. As Shelley sat up, he set the book aside on top of some other books about Greek philosophy, mainly Aristotle. "So," he said, "are we cool? Or are you gonna frenzy again?" "Frenzy?" she asked weakly. "Yeah, it's what we call it when we go crazy and kill everything that moves. You feel like you're gonna do it? Because I'd hate to punch you out again before we talk. I mean, a black guy hitting a white girl just looks bad, you know? Makes me feel like I'm conforming to stereotypes." At those words, she suddenly felt a brief stab of, not pain, exactly, but a flash of anger, so intense it made her head hurt again. Then it was gone. "I'm okay. You don't need to hurt me." "I don't plan to. When were you embraced?" She just stared at him, and he rolled his eyes. "Okay. When were you turned? You know, into a vampire. A vampire? He sighed, and then opened his mouth. Shelley gasped as his incisors slid down into wicked fangs. "What's your name?" he asked, retracting the fangs. Shelley. Okay, Shelley. My name's Dre. Now I'm gonna spell things out for you. Sometime recently, maybe earlier tonight, some asshole attacked you, bit you on the neck, and made you pass out. When you woke up, you were thirstier than you'd ever been and had a splitting headache that grew and grew until those idiots pissed you off. Then everything went black. Sound familiar? She nodded quietly. Now here's what I need to know. Did you see the vampire who did this to you? Or did he say anything? I didn't see his face. He was big and wearing a heavy coat. But he did say something. She wiped a tear from her eyes and then froze when she realized it was blood. He said, "Tell him Jack sent you." She didn't look up from the bloody tears on her fingertips. Dre cursed softly. "Well then, I guess that makes you my little sister or something. Smiling Jack is my sire too. He blows into Chicago like clockwork every few years, embraces someone into Clan Brujah. That's what you are now, a Brujah like me. And then splits, leaving all the other Brujah to clean up his mess." Brujah? That's Spanish for witch, isn't it? Dre laughed. You know, I said the exact same thing when I was in your shoes. Don't worry though, I got a guy you can talk to tomorrow night, once you've rested. He's a Brujah too, but he's old as shit and pompous as hell. But he answered all my questions after my embrace. He could do the same for you. Without meaning to, Dre glanced over to the mirror on the wall and took in his reflection. He hadn't aged at all. But the expensive suit he wore instead of threadbare gang colours was just one sign of how he'd grown in the last 25 years. He turned back to Shelley. Consider this me paying it forward.